What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and I wanted to talk to you today about a concept that I thought was pretty interesting. I talked to some of my friends who are content creators, DMs, players, and so on, and I got a lot of interesting perspective on the concept of death saving throws and dying from the enemy perspective. And what I mean by that is essentially it boils down to a question. Do you, as a DM, and then we'll get to the player side of this as well, when you knock a player unconscious, bring them down to 0 hit points, do you then move on to the next person who's also upright and fight them, or do you stay and double tap the PC and kill them outright so they fail their death saving throws? Now, this first came up to me because I was playing Baldur's Gate 3 on Tactician mode, and in one fight we were in, the enemy knocked us down and then basically just finished us off in like one instance, and it made me think. And I got a lot of really interesting feedback on this. But first, it made me think, are monsters aware of the concept of death saving throws? In that you knock somebody down and they're unconscious, and that they know that they're unconscious and dying, kind of, but they're not dead. So they know they need to do more to basically finish them off, and then essentially get the PC to fail 3 death saving throws, kind of a thing. Are monsters aware of that sort of metagame mechanic? And I got a lot of, like I said, I got a lot of interesting feedback because I'm thinking, okay, well, is it based on the intelligence of the creature? And that is a large majority of the people that I polled on this said that it's tied to the mechanics and the intelligence of the character, right? So basically, because my thoughts process is like, if you think about like a brown bear in real life, right? What they tell you to do if you encounter a brown bear is to, lay down, play dead, right? And then the thing will, in theory, may leave you alone. Whereas you wouldn't do that with a black bear because a black bear is a scavenger and it would just eat you. So if you're fighting some kind of animal, and I think we all can agree that if the monsters or bad guys or whatever they're doing, if they knock the entire party unconscious, then that potentially has the opportunity to lead to a TPK. Like if it's again creatures or monstrous things that don't have like a crazy high intelligence, and the entire party is knocked unconscious, then over time everybody will die. Right? They'll go around and they'll finish everyone off. Now, again, we have the concept of healing magic and also the concept of rolling a natural 20 on a death saving throw, right? So I like in my head, I was thinking, okay, you attack somebody, you knock them unconscious, and then in the midst of the battlefield, there are other things, possibly with magical spell effects and other things. So maybe you leave that unconscious enemy or, again, the unconscious player there, and then move to go handle what is seemingly potentially the bigger threat. And that's kind of how, at least in every game that I've played and most games that I've ran, that seems to be how it's been handled. More often than not, when the DM knocks a player down to 0 hit points, they seem to move on to go fight the other people. And like only when they stay behind to try to finish them off and make them fail death saving throws is like when the DM is being like serious. And I say that just because, again, that's been my personal experience. And perhaps I've been playing in like easy mode games and I haven't known about this. Uh, but I asked some of my friends and they said, no, it seems reasonable that the the monster, or especially if it's a more intelligent enemy, will know that it needs to finish off the player. Because again, if you live in a world with healing magic, it gets to the next player's turn, they cast Healing Word, pop that person back up. Now that's another combatant doing more damage and in the fight, even if it's only for the purposes of them popping in, making a hit on you, and then falling unconscious again because of some sort of damage that they've taken. And again, if the monster is aware of the concepts of healing magic, again, it could get to that player's turn and they might roll a natural 20 and pop up with 1 hit point and, like, oh, back in the fight, here we go. So it's an interesting concept because and again, like I said, my ultimate goal for this is I want to know how you handle this in your games. One thing that I was a little surprised of is one of my friends said he actually would feel almost insulted if the DM didn't finish his character off, because like if I know that what I'm fighting is like intelligent enough to know better and that it had the means of finishing me off, and by that it's like if it's a fight or flight situation and the monster needs to either, it could finish me off or it could leave and not die, and that's what it's going to do. But if it's going to stay in the fight, then it should stay and finish him off. And he said, like, again, it would feel almost insulting that the DM was kind of like babying us by not finishing me off when he had the opportunity to. And I was really blown away by that opinion. That was one that kind of shocked me. But another one of my friends had brought up the concept of, especially if this is like a recurring villain, perhaps somebody that's come back and disappeared again, they'll know the party's capabilities and like know what they're capable of, right? So if they did this in the last fight and it knocked somebody unconscious and then moved on, and somebody popped them up with healing word and got them back into the fight, and it almost caused that villain to die, well, now they're aware that the party has those kind of abilities, so they'll know better. Hey, I need to find a way to either shut down healing, target the healer first, or when they're on the ground, I need to finish them off, or leave my minions to finish them off, or find some means of, persistent damage to like kill them when they're on the ground, kind of a thing. And yeah, it just was a really, I don't know. I thought it was going to be like a simple concept. I said it, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, pretty much." When player gets unconscious, we move on to the next kind of active threat. But I guess what the big consensus, I guess there's kind of like three camps. There's, you go for the next kind of up and active threat, which is, they go unconscious, you move on to the next one. There's they go unconscious, you finish the job every time. Or there's the kind of middle ground, which is it's based on the kind of intelligence of the creature and the knowledge of that monster, right? Like maybe it is intelligent, but it doesn't know that the party has means to pop people back up. So when it knocks that person unconscious, it thinks as long as it stays there, nobody's going to be able to get over and use the help action or whatever to pop them up. I have the opportunity to, I can basically guard this body. I can knock them unconscious and then use that as sort of a bait to pull the party members to me. And then finds out, oh, they've got healing word. Now I know next chance I get, I'm finishing the job. So I'm curious, out of that, or maybe there's some other fourth camp that I'm not aware of. Where do you guys fall in this on your end? Are you move on to the next active upright enemy, finish them off no matter what, or kind of judge it based on the scenario and the intelligence of the creature? Because, yeah, it's funny that we're almost 10 years into the life cycle of 5th edition, and I really just, for the first time, had the concept to think about this. I've made videos in the past on, like, death and dying, and I have some other things. I've played my first Pathfinder game today, so I have some new insight. Well, I guess it's kind of old insight, because it's more like 3.5, but either way. Yeah, I'm very curious what your thoughts and opinions are, and let me know in the comments how you handle this as a DM. And then again, from the player perspective, how do you feel? Do you feel like you want the DM to move on, or do you like the concept of a more, I don't know, it's not even harsh, it's really just playing by the rules, where the DM doesn't leave you the opportunity. If it's got 2 attacks and it knocks you down with 1, 2 failed death saving throws with the critical hit on the follow-up. And then, like, now you're in, it's dire straits. What's going on? Because, you often hear people talk about how, like, when someone's down and dying, there's been the concept of rolling death saving throws privately. Because this is, and again, you know what? I didn't even think about this. This keys into this conversation. Where some people are like, you don't feel urgency to get somebody up when they're down and unconscious. Now, again, maybe this is only, we're talking about ranged attacks, so they're down from a distance and there's no enemy right up on them. But it is something that a lot of people have brought up, that, like, essentially, death saving throws, like, I can, like, oh, you'll make it. You can choose, like, you have the opportunity to fail 2 death saving throws, even if you roll a natural 1. I'll get you up next turn. I'm going to queue up this big damage thing. Maybe we can take the enemy out, and then it's not even an issue anymore. And people don't really feel the gravity of death saving throws if you play, 5th edition by the book. Because if somebody goes down and unconscious and someone has healing, especially something like a healing word, which is a bonus action, I can just pop them up on my turn, just leave them. Not a big deal. But that's where people have brought up the concept of rolling death saving throws privately between the player and the DM, so that the rest of the party doesn't know how close to death you are. But if the monsters are just going to be finishing you off left and right, it doesn't matter at that point, because it's why would you even bother doing that? So, because that's what I've seen is people are like, yeah, you can afford to wait a turn. Even if you fail 2 death saving throws, I'll get you up next turn. Not a big deal. And if the monsters and the enemies are coming out and finishing people off, that's not really an option. You need to get them up and back in the fight as soon as possible to prevent them from being killed outright. So, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. How do you act as a DM and as a player? Would you feel offended if the DM just kind of moved on? Is that them taking it easy on you? Or do you want them to sit there and finish the job if it makes sense to do so? Anyway, again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.